Welcome, beautiful soul. I'm grateful you're here, because only kind hearts pause to hear stories like this. Tonight, we'll walk through the journey of a woman they tried to quiet, but she chose grace and found her voice instead. Sit with me for a moment and listen to a story from Black Women's Soul, where every woman's truth deserves to be heard, and no one can silence a soul that knows its worth. Inside one of the city's finest restaurants, a quiet server moved like calm water, steady, graceful, unseen. People praised the food and tested her patience. They joked, they pushed, they stared, and she met them all with dignity. But tonight everything would change, because sometimes one gentle boundary, spoken at the right time, can steady a whole room. This isn't a story about pain. It's about Elina Brown, a Black woman who refused to let the world decide her worth. The first light of morning crept into the city, like a shy guest who didn't want to wake anyone. It slipped between gray towers and brick walls, until it found a narrow window that faced east. The window of a small apartment on the fourth floor of an old building that smelled faintly of detergent and dust. Inside, that thin beam of silver light landed across a table that knew routine. A worn bus pass whose edges had softened from years of use, a careful stack of coins counted down to the cent, and a small photograph of a girl wearing a blue school uniform. The girl's smile was pure sunlight. Her name was Nia Brown, 12 years old, a child whose laughter still had room to grow. Beside the photograph rested a narrow, ribbon-tied notebook. It wasn't pretty, no floral cover, no fancy pages, but its purpose was sacred. This was the book that Elina Brown opened each dawn, before the world demanded pieces of her. It held the lines she wrote to keep herself steady, her private scripture of survival and self-respect. It was 4:47 a.m. when her eyes opened. She didn't need an alarm. Years of early shifts had taught her body how to wake before the noise of other lives began. She sat up slowly, her breath visible in the faint chill, her back straight but unhurried. 36 years old, tall, graceful in stillness. The deep brown of her skin caught the faint gray light, gleaming softly like polished wood. Her hair was braided neatly, pinned close for work. Everything about her carried the discipline of a woman who had learned to hold her life together with both hands. She reached for the notebook and uncapped her pen. The page was clean, waiting. She thought for a long moment before writing the day's line. "You are not your pay. You are your promise." She read it twice, each word a small weight pressed into the morning. Something to carry in her pocket when the world tried to make her invisible.
Every morning, I write something that keeps me standing. Yesterday, it was about patience. Today, it's about worth. This little ritual, it reminds me I still belong to myself. The city takes pieces of you, the bus lines, the shifts, the tips, the names people forget to say right, but this notebook gives them back. I may serve food, but I also serve peace. That counts for something.
She closed the notebook and sat for a while, listening to the hum of pipes in the walls. The building always woke slowly, like an old friend stretching. Somewhere below, a neighbor coughed, water ran through old metal, and the scent of frying onions drifted faintly from a kitchen one floor down. Life was beginning its slow climb up through the floors. Elina rose, slipped her feet into soft house shoes, and padded across the small room to the stove. She filled a dented kettle, the one with a handle wrapped in cloth to keep it from burning her fingers, and set it on the burner. It didn't whistle anymore, just released a low hum when the water started to move. She liked that sound. It felt like the room breathing with her. She measured oats into a small pot, poured in water, stirred with slow patience. The spoon made a quiet rhythm against the metal, and steam rose in gentle curls that fogged the lower part of the window. She sliced half a banana over the bowl, sprinkled 1 spoon of sugar she'd saved from a coffee shop packet. Nothing wasted, everything measured. When she sat to eat, she looked again at her daughter's picture. "Good morning, Star," she whispered softly. "Shine your own way today." Her voice filled the small space gently, as if she were speaking not only to the photograph but to the invisible hopes that lived in the room. A knock came, not sharp, not demanding, just a familiar rhythm tapped with knuckles that already belonged here. The door pushed open slightly, and Maya Okafor stepped in, carrying a plastic container still fogged with warmth.
Elina, it's me. I brought something warm. Rice and beans, some plantains too. Heat it now for your lunch. Don't argue. And don't talk about paying me back on Friday either. You already pay me back every week. You carry Mrs. Ellis's groceries up those 3 flights. Fix her dryer when it jams. Walk her to that clinic so the doctor listens. That's how poor people stay rich, by lifting each other.
Elina smiled, genuine and grateful. She motioned toward the small table, and Maya sat, easing herself into the chair with a sigh that carried both age and peace. The two women ate in companionable silence for a few moments, the kind that needs no words. Then Elina spoke softly about Nia's latest school project, something about the world's oceans, and how they connected people across continents. She told Maya about the plan to visit the aquarium next month, when Nia came back from her aunt's. As she spoke, her tone was light, but beneath it was the quiet ache of a mother who missed her child's daily chatter. Maya listened, nodding as she spooned beans onto her plate. When Elina mentioned a dream that had troubled her, a dream where a faceless voice told Nia that her dark skin was a problem to be fixed, Maya put down her fork, her eyes heavy with understanding. Colorism is a lie, Maya said finally, her voice low but firm. A lie written by people afraid of the sun. Don't carry that weight, Elina. The words landed with the gentle strength of truth. Elina nodded slowly. They finished breakfast while the city stretched and came fully awake outside. Car horns, footsteps, the faint call of a street vendor selling bread. The noises folded together into a living soundtrack. After washing her bowl, Elina dressed for work. Her uniform was simple, gray pants pressed crisp, a clean white blouse, black flats. She smoothed her hair, pinned back the last braid, and checked herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back was calm, capable, beautifully human. She gathered her tote, her kit, as she called it. Inside were the tools of quiet endurance. A sewing needle, a safety pin, band-aids, spare shoes, and a small pen that could write upside down. I spoke to Mrs. Raymond in 7B, Maya said softly. She has a spare desk by the window. She said Nia can use it after school when she's back next term. It's quieter than that community room. Elina's smile deepened, gratitude flickered in her eyes. That would be a blessing. Maya nodded. Then her tone shifted slightly, becoming serious. If you need me today, you send me a text. Just a single dot. That's the signal. I'll show up. Elina paused, hand on the doorknob. Why a dot? It's short, Maya said. Fast. Nobody else knows what it means. And because I can smell trouble brewing from 10 blocks away. I'll be near the restaurant around 7 tonight. Not to worry you, just to witness. A woman needs a witness sometimes. Elina nodded again. They understood each other without more words. Before leaving, Elina hesitated. There's a message from my mother, she said quietly. The clinic wants to change her medication again. The insurance paperwork's a mess. She asked if I could send a little more this month. Maya poured the last of the tea into Elina's cup. We'll figure it out. We always do. I know, Elina said softly. But 2 of my shifts got cut this week. Rick says it's just numbers. Numbers are always personal when they're supposed to pay the rent, Maya murmured. They hugged at the door, a long, solid embrace that smelled of tea, soap, and shared history. Elina stepped into the hallway, locking the door behind her. The corridor smelled faintly of laundry detergent and frying bacon from the neighbor's kitchen. On the stairs, a toddler sat in pajamas, banging a wooden spoon on the rail. The child's mother hurried by with an apologetic smile. Elina waved at the little one and kept moving down. Outside, the street met her with the hum of morning traffic. The air tasted faintly of diesel and bakery sugar. Vendors opened their carts, buses hissed, shopkeepers raised shutters with clattering rolls. The world was in motion again. Elina walked briskly to the bus stop, her shoes tapping a quiet rhythm on cracked pavement. She stood under the faded shelter, the city rising around her like a slow-building song. When the bus arrived, she climbed aboard and found her usual spot near the back door. The same faces rode this line each morning. Nurses finishing night shifts, janitors, security guards, students half asleep. There was a shared silence among them. The silence of people who worked hard and dreamed in small pockets of time. A woman in scrubs dozed briefly against Elina's shoulder, waking with a start. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "You're fine," Elina said, offering a gentle smile. "Long night." "Double shift," the nurse replied, rubbing her eyes. "You." "Restaurant," Elina said. The nurse nodded. "Work is work." The city outside blurred by. A barber shop with a hand-painted sign that read "We Listen," a corner store displaying bright plastic buckets, a halal cart releasing clouds of spiced steam. A man on the sidewalk played saxophone into the chill, his case open for coins. The sound followed the bus for half a block, sweet and mournful. Elina looked out the window and thought about the life she had built from discipline and persistence. Years ago, she had worked at a hotel front desk, greeting guests whose eyes sometimes slid past her. She remembered taking a free conflict resolution class in a community center basement. The instructor, Mr. Henderson, had taught them simple but powerful things. Keep your hands visible, speak from your chest, turn storms into rain. Those lessons had become her invisible armor. She also thought of Ao, Nia's father. Once he had been laughter and big ideas. He'd promised stability, then disappeared for a short break that never ended. Elina never poisoned Nia's heart with that story. Instead, she rewrote it into truth wrapped in kindness. Your father loved you. He just wasn't strong enough to stay. His leaving doesn't make you less. You are a whole person with a whole future. The bus turned a corner, and the morning widened. She pulled the signal cord and stepped off near the restaurant. The smell of roasted coffee beans and warm bread greeting her like old acquaintances. The sign above the door read Marrow and Mint. The name always made her think of balance, strength and freshness side by side. The building stood where sleek glass met old brick, a handshake between past and present. Elina took a deep breath before she entered. Inside, the world changed. The noise of the street dissolved into the hum of preparation. The air smelled of citrus zest, butter, and herbs. Wooden tables gleamed under soft light. The restaurant wasn't large, but it was precise. Everything placed with purpose. Rick, the floor manager, looked up from his phone as she hung her coat.
"Well, look who's glowing today. Morning, Ebony. You shine so bright, I might need sunglasses in here."
My name is Elina. I've said it enough times to know how it feels when someone ignores it. People call mistakes small, but names aren't small, they're doors. When someone uses mine right, I walk through that door standing tall. When they don't, it's like being asked to shrink just a little. I won't. My name is Elina. It fits me exactly.
Rick didn't respond, already scrolling again. She didn't push. She'd learned that dignity didn't require an audience. She tied her apron, checked her pen, and began the quiet ritual that made her shifts bearable. Aligning silverware, straightening vases so flowers faced the seats, not the aisles, and testing every glass for smudges. Her movements were small acts of grace. The kitchen behind her buzzed with rhythm, knives chopping, pans hissing, voices blending. Chef Rena, tall and sharp-eyed, moved like a general commanding a calm army. "Taste everything," she said to the line cooks. "Season with truth." Elina smiled at that line. She trusted Rena. The woman had no patience for cruelty and no tolerance for laziness. At 11 sharp, the door to the kitchen swung open and Ms. Harrell, the owner, entered. The sound of her heels was soft but certain. She had a way of filling space without raising her voice.
Morning, team. Listen up, just a few adjustments for tonight. We're hosting Harrow Capital in the private room, so there's no room for mistakes, but remember, there's also no bending your dignity. We serve excellence, not ego.
She moved with rhythm. Polite words, careful steps, hands steady. People came and went, leaving small trails of stories behind them. An older man ate soup alone and said thank you every time she refilled his glass. A group of nurses laughed so hard they nearly cried. The sound made her think of Nia. During her break, she stepped outside to the alley behind the restaurant. The cold air there always felt honest. She took out her phone, filmed a pigeon marching across a pipe, and sent it to Nia. A minute later, a voice note came back. Mama, stop filming birds like they're celebrities. She turned, caught Elina's eye, and smiled. Good morning, Elina. I read last week's guest cards. Your notes were precise and human. Thank you for caring at that level. Elina felt the praise like warm sunlight through the narrow window of her day. Thank you, ma'am. As lunch service began, Elina laughed, warmth spreading through her chest. Her phone rang again. Maya. Everything steady? For now, Elina said. But Rick's humming. He only hums when he's nervous. Big night. I'll be 2 blocks away around 7, Maya replied. Just in case the world forgets its manners. Elina chuckled softly and pocketed the phone. She straightened her apron, took one more deep breath, and stepped back inside ready to meet whatever the evening had planned. By late afternoon, the rhythm inside Marrow and Mint had reached that delicate point between order and chaos. The lights slanted through the front windows in long amber stripes, laying soft patterns across the polished tables. To the guests, the restaurant looked calm, but behind the scenes it breathed hard, like an athlete holding perfect posture while running uphill. The hum of the refrigerator blended with the clink of glassware, the muted thud of knives on boards, and the steady cadence of shoes moving across tile. Elina moved through the room like she belonged to it. Each step had purpose. She adjusted a chair by an inch, smoothed the linen that rippled when a draft slipped under the door, and made sure the flowers on every table faced the seat that would receive them. She believed beauty was a kind of respect, not decoration but intention. In the kitchen, Chef Rena commanded her domain with the calm precision of a conductor. She reminded the younger cooks to watch their heat and to respect the oil. It always told them when it was ready. Elina admired her from the doorway. There was strength in a woman who never had to raise her voice to prove it. Rena led by consistency, not fear. And that lesson stayed with Elina each time she stepped onto the dining floor. She checked the clock. The private dining room would soon host a dinner for Harrow Capital, a name that carried equal measures of money and arrogance. The prep list for that event was longer than any recipe. Every detail had to be perfect: lighting, temperature, music, glass alignment. Rick, the manager, reappeared, pacing in small circles as he typed on his phone. He muttered about important clients and not giving them any reason to complain, but his words stopped when Miss Harrell entered with her clipboard in hand. She reminded him to remove the corner table by 4 and to use the space for the presentation stand. She added one final rule: if any guest disrespected staff, he was to come directly to her, no discussion. Rick nodded quickly, eager to agree. Elina watched the exchange from across the room. She liked how Miss Harrell's words didn't need volume to carry authority. The owner never confused kindness with weakness. When Miss Harrell left, Rick turned toward Elina with a nervous smile, telling her they needed to make sure the guests were impressed. She simply answered and went back to polishing glassware. Dinner preparation moved forward in waves. Silver trays lined with sliced lemons, baskets of bread warming in the oven, servers whispering table numbers under their breath. The room filled with that expectant hush that precedes luxury, the quiet hum that says money is about to be served. When the first guests arrived, the evening light had deepened into gold. They entered in groups, men in tailored suits and women in sharp dresses that looked more strategic than celebratory. Their laughter had edges, and they carried the easy confidence of people who rarely waited for anything. Elina greeted each table with calm warmth. She poured sparkling water, recited specials, and described mocktails with a sincerity that made them sound as important as wine pairings. Her voice turned the menu into invitation, not performance. In the private room, the men from Harrow Capital gathered around a long table dressed in pale linen and candlelight. Laughter bounced off the walls, rising with every pour of wine. One man, Brent, moved as if the evening belonged to him. Tall, expensively tanned, cuff links flashing whenever he gestured. Another, Jonah, arrived later, quiet, composed, no tie, eyes thoughtful. He asked only for a pot of hot tea, and when he spoke, others listened without knowing why. Elina sensed the difference between them immediately. Brent's attention was a spotlight, Jonah's was a steady flame. She had learned to tell the two apart. When Brent snapped his fingers at her across the table and used the wrong name, calling her Ebony, she steadied herself before answering. Her voice remained calm as she corrected him and promised to check with the chef. Jonah looked up briefly, meeting her eyes with a small nod of silent respect. In the kitchen, Chef Rena read Brent's request, shook her head, and said the guests could have quick service or truffle pasta, but not both. Elina smiled faintly and promised to pass the message along gently. The chef asked if she was all right, and she replied that she was steady. She carried that steadiness with her as she moved among tables, pouring wine, delivering plates, adjusting the rhythm of the night. Service was choreography. Every movement precise, invisible, necessary. The private room grew louder, voices mixing with the soft jazz flowing from the speakers. Miss Harrell passed quietly near the doorway and asked how the room felt. Elina replied that the food was on schedule, the drinks balanced, one guest kept testing names but stopped when corrected, and the sober guest appreciated the mocktails. Miss Harrell nodded, satisfied, but Elina added that the room carried a strange energy, like unspoken instructions to laugh louder than needed, and to push boundaries just to see how far they would bend. Miss Harrell thought for a moment and said they would dose the room with boundaries and grace. Elina agreed, calling it sharp and kind. Dessert service neared. Brent, sensing the night slipping from his control, tapped his knife against a glass and called for a round of toasts. Laughter rippled as an assistant rolled in a small white box tied with ribbon. Elina watched from the edge of the room, her stomach tightening. She recognized that sound, the laughter that comes before humiliation disguised as humor. Brent untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a plain white theater mask and empty face. The laughter faltered. Elina stepped forward, her voice calm but firm, reminding them that if a joke touched someone's identity, body, or dignity, it was better left unsaid. Kind words traveled farther. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jonah reached across the table, covered the mask with his hand, and suggested something different. 1 minute of truth. No jokes that turned people into content, just honest words. He began by thanking the staff and expressing gratitude for business that didn't make anyone feel small. The tension softened. Others followed his lead. One man admitted he was simply tired. Another confessed to being rude to a server once and regretting it. And a third revealed that his wife was ill and he needed to say it aloud just once. The air shifted, the laughter turning gentle and human again. Then Brent tried to regain control. He spoke loudly, declaring that winners didn't let a server rewrite the script. Elina met his gaze and answered with calm strength. She said she would always call people by the names they chose and expected the same in return. Her name was Elina. It wasn't decoration, it was definition. When someone changed it, they shortened not just a word but a part of her. Tonight, she said, she would keep it whole. Silence followed. A few of the men repeated her name softly, as if acknowledging something sacred. At that moment, Miss Harrell appeared in the doorway and said that in her house no one became a costume. If the plan was kind, they could proceed. If not, the curtain would close. And it did. The roast ended. Dessert replaced tension. As the guests began to leave, Jonah leaned toward Elina and thanked her quietly for drawing the line. Brent forced a grin, insisting on a group photo with their star server. But Jonah refused. He told them to let the staff be the staff, that their work wasn't a prop for anyone's selfie. The photo was taken without her. When the last guest left, the private room looked like an exhaled breath. Plates empty, candles burned low. Elina blew out one small candle and watched the smoke curl upward, thin and graceful, fading like the last note of a song. Rick appeared in the doorway, trying to sound cheerful. He told her to smile more. It was good for tips. Elina turned to him, her eyes steady, and replied that smiling wasn't part of the uniform. Care was. Rick blinked, uncertain, and muttered agreement. Outside, under the soft glow of the awning, Maya stood waiting just as she'd promised. Her cardigan pockets were deep, her expression calm. She joked gently that she hadn't received a dot message but came anyway. Elina's shoulders dropped. The tension of the night finally lifted as she said she was glad Maya did. They stood side by side, watching a city bus side to a stop as passengers stepped into the cool night. Elina said she wanted Nia to memorize one sentence. "My name is mine. My worth is not a joke." Maya nodded, saying it was a good lesson, armor made of words. They walked home together beneath the streetlights, sharing a small slice of leftover cloud cake Jess had wrapped for her. The sweetness felt like a truce between exhaustion and pride. Inside the apartment, the air was still warm from the morning. On the table sat a folded note in Nia's careful handwriting. "Mama, my report is on the desk. Love, N." Next to it lay a drawing. A woman in a black dress standing behind a counter with a speech bubble that read, "My name is Elina." Underneath, the child had written, "And she is brave." Elina sat down slowly, the weight of the day settling over her shoulders. She smiled through tired eyes, opened her notebook and wrote 5 new lines. "No touching. Art asks permission. Consent can't be bought. We're done. Cinnamon 12. She read the lines once softly like a promise. Then she closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and let the quiet hold her. When the apartment fell quiet again, the silence felt heavier than sleep. Outside, the wind rustled faintly through the narrow alleys, carrying the distant hum of a train rolling over its tracks. Elina changed into her nightshirt and sat for a while at the edge of the bed, the small lamp painting a golden oval across her knees. The ribbon notebook rested beside her like a patient friend. She ran a hand over the cover, thinking of the sentence she had written that morning. "You are not your pay. You are your promise." She thought about what the day had demanded: patience at dawn, courage at dusk, composure long after her body wanted to rest. Her feet ached and her back whispered protest, yet her mind refused to collapse. The notebook waited for a closing line, so she opened it again and wrote quietly, the pen scratching softly against the paper. "The world will test my peace, but peace can learn to fight without shouting." She smiled faintly, folded the blanket back and lay down. But sleep didn't arrive right away. It hovered at the edge of her thoughts while she replayed each detail of the evening. The moment Brent snapped his fingers, Jonah's calm voice redirecting the room, Miss Harrell's steady words from the doorway, and the echo that lingered longest. Her own voice, measured but unshaken, saying her name aloud as if anchoring herself to the floor. That single act, claiming her name, was small to an outsider, but Elina understood how easily dignity eroded when small things were allowed to pass. Every ebony, every dismissive gesture, every polite smile forced out of habit. They were pebbles that filled a woman's pockets until she could no longer swim. Tonight, she had emptied a few stones from hers. She turned off the lamp. Through the thin curtains, the city light painted faint stripes on the wall. She watched them blur and sharpen with every passing car until her eyes finally closed. At 2:17 in the morning, a sound stirred her awake. Not loud, just the creak of pipes expanding somewhere in the building. For a second she thought it was Nia whispering, and then remembered her daughter was still at her aunt's. She rose quietly, checked the lock, poured a half glass of water, and stood by the window. The street below was nearly empty. A man in a reflective vest swept the sidewalk under the yellow street lamp. Across the road, a stray cat darted into an alley. She watched until the shapes disappeared, then leaned her forehead lightly against the cool glass. She wondered how many women were awake at that same moment for the same reasons. Not fear, just that stubborn awareness that sleep feels unsafe until everything has been checked twice. Women who kept worlds running, who fixed, who smiled, who held names together while the rest of the city slept easy. People called them strong as if it were a compliment, never realizing that strength was sometimes only exhaustion dressed up in grace. She breathed out slowly, set the glass in the sink, and returned to bed. This time sleep met her halfway. Morning came again, not shy but confident, pouring through the window with a clarity that made even dust motes look alive. The alarm buzzed once before Elina turned it off. Her body complained, but her mind was already in motion. She stretched, rolled her shoulders, and felt the soreness that reminded her she had worked, that she had lived. The kettle hummed as she filled it. The ritual repeated: tea bag in cup, oats in pot. But today everything tasted different. The air felt lighter. Jonah's words about honesty drifted back through her thoughts, a quiet anthem of truth. Her phone blinked with 2 messages. One from Maya read, "Heard about the mask story. You handled it like a storm whisperer. Proud of you." The second was from Ms. Harrell. "Respect meeting Tuesday. You'll lead discussion on boundaries." Elina stared at the screen. Leadership hadn't been part of her plan. Survival had. But maybe this was how leadership began, when survival grew roots and reached for sunlight. She dressed, pinned her hair, slipped her pen into her pocket. Before leaving, she opened the notebook and wrote one more line. "Boundaries are lessons in translation. They tell the world what my peace means in its language." The bus ride felt slower that morning. Or maybe she was simply paying more attention. She noticed the way steam curled from coffee cups, the way a father adjusted his son's backpack before the boy ran toward school, the way strangers nodded to each other at the stoplight as if to say, "We're still here." A small smile touched her lips. Not joy exactly, but recognition. When she stepped into the restaurant, the air was cooler than usual. Rick looked up immediately and greeted her by the right name. For a second she blinked in surprise, then answered in kind. He told her Miss Harrell wanted to see her before service. She followed him upstairs to the small office. Miss Harrell stood near the window, reading something on her tablet. When she saw Elina, she set it down and smiled, asking her to close the door. She said last night could have gone badly, but Elina had steadied the room and given the staff language they could use. They would turn that into policy, simple, human, clear, and she wanted Elina to help write the staff guide. Elina hesitated, surprised, asking if she was the right person for that. Miss Harrell simply nodded and said she was because she lived it. The weight of that trust settled gently, not as pressure but as acknowledgement. Elina nodded, unsure whether to smile or cry. She said she hadn't planned to change anything. She had only refused to keep pretending that small things were small. Maybe that was how it started, with one quiet no and one steady correction. She agreed to help with the guide, promising to write what she knew. That respect wasn't a favor, it was a language, and people only needed to be taught how to speak it again. Ms. Harrell extended her hand, saying they would speak it together. They shook hands, and for a moment the office felt brighter, filled with a rare, silent understanding between 2 women who had both learned how to hold a line without raising their voices. By noon, the restaurant returned to its usual hum. Regular customers drifted in. The elderly man with his soup, the pair of nurses, the mother and child sharing fries. Life went on. But something invisible hung in the air, something lighter. Jess passed by carrying a tray and asked if Elina was good. Elina nodded. Jess grinned and teased that she looked like she'd slept with angels. Elina laughed softly and said maybe she had, maybe with exhaustion. When the shift ended, she left the restaurant slowly, letting herself breathe the late afternoon air. The city moved around her. Taxis honking, people arguing, children chasing a ball down the sidewalk. It all sounded less harsh now, more like background music than chaos. She took the long route home, passing the same halal cart, the same barbershop with "We Listen" painted in fading blue letters. She paused outside the window for a second. The barber, an old man with kind eyes, noticed her reflection and waved. She waved back. At home, she reheated Maya's leftover rice and beans. The aroma filled the apartment, simple, earthy, comforting. She sat at the table where everything had begun that morning and looked around. The photo of Nia, the bus pass, the coins, the notebook. Each item was a small piece of her quiet empire. She picked up the notebook once more before bed and added another short line beneath the others. Names are small prayers. I'll keep saying mine until the world learns to listen. Then she placed the pen down, turned off the lamp, and listened as the city outside whispered its endless lullaby. Horns, footsteps, laughter, wind. Tomorrow would bring new work, new faces, new tests. But tonight she had drawn her boundary and stood inside it, whole. Sunlight pressed through thin curtains like a visitor who no longer needed to knock. It poured across the kitchen table, sliding over the small photograph of Nia and warming the cracked edge of Elina's bus pass. Morning had always come whether she was ready or not, but today it felt different. Not heavy, not hurried, just clear. The air smelled of oatmeal, laundry soap, and the faint sweetness of plantains from the container Maya had left yesterday. The notebook still lay open where Elina had written her final 5 rules. The ink had dried into the paper, the letters slightly indented, as if pressed by conviction itself. She traced them with one fingertip before turning to a blank page. She thought quietly to herself,
I used to think peace was something you earned after the world finally got tired of testing you. But peace is work. It's the small act of standing up for your name, for your skin, for the way you breathe. Yesterday was a line drawn. Today is learning to live on the right side of it.
Elina closed the notebook and smiled softly. Then came a sound from the doorway, the shuffling of small feet wrapped in a blanket. Nia's sleepy voice floated in, warm and bright. Mama, are you awake? Elina turned, her smile widening. I am, Star. Come here. The girl padded across the floor, curls puffed from sleep, and climbed into her mother's lap. The warmth between them filled the room better than any heater. They sat quietly for a moment before Nia spoke again. Her words slow and serious, as children's truths often are. I dreamed about you, she said. You were on a big stage. There was a white mask in a box, and the box said no longer needed. Elina's breath caught. That sounds about right, she whispered. That sounds exactly like last night. Did you win? The girl asked. It wasn't a contest, baby, Elina said gently, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. It was a choice, and we chose respect. They ate oatmeal together at the table, the sunlight painting gold patches across the worn wood. Between bites, Nia pulled a sheet of paper from her school folder. My essay, she announced proudly. It's about Ida B. Wells. She used her voice even when people told her to be quiet. Elina listened as her daughter read aloud, the small voice trembling slightly but holding conviction. She told the truth about what was happening, Nia read. It was costly. She did it anyway. Elina leaned forward and kissed the top of her head. That's a good choice, Star. Very good. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence. Outside, the city was already alive. Car horns, footsteps, a vendor calling to morning customers. Elina packed her tote while Nia gathered her schoolwork. At the door, the girl turned, eyes wide with the serious curiosity that always startled her mother. Mama, does being brave make you tired? Elina paused, thinking. Sometimes, she said. But being silent for too long makes you disappear. And that's worse. Nia nodded, satisfied, then hugged her tightly before heading to the neighbor's apartment for the ride to school. When the door closed behind her, Elina allowed herself one long breath. Half sigh, half prayer. then grabbed her coat and stepped into the cool morning. The city met her with its usual chorus. Buses groaning, pigeons fluttering, radios leaking from open windows. She followed her familiar route to the stop, bus pass warm in her palm, notebook tucked safely in her bag. On the bus, she stood near the back door, watching sunlight ripple across storefronts. She noticed small things she used to overlook. A teenager offering his seat to an elderly woman. A shopkeeper sweeping the same square of sidewalk twice just to make it perfect. The world hadn't changed overnight, but her eyes had. A nurse from yesterday's ride was there again, this time wide awake and smiling. "Hey, restaurant lady," she said. "You survived the weekend?" Elina laughed. "Barely." "Same here," the nurse replied. "Double shifts again tonight." Elina smiled gently. "Keep some strength for yourself. They can borrow your skills, not your soul." The nurse grinned and shook her head. "I need that on a mug." When the bus stopped near Marrow and Mint, Elina stepped off into air that smelled faintly of lemon polish. She pushed open the heavy oak door and paused, letting her senses adjust to the rhythm of prep time. The clink of pans, low conversation, the pulse of work beginning. Rick stood by the counter with a clipboard in hand, not humming for once. "Morning, Elina," he said. The name came out correctly again. She noticed, and so did he. "Morning, Rick," she replied. He cleared his throat, sounding almost nervous. "Miss Harrell wants everyone in the main dining room at 10. Says it's important." Elina nodded, hung her coat, and moved through the room, checking each detail by instinct. The tables were set, the silverware catching the light like small mirrors. In the kitchen, Chef Rena's voice carried above the sizzle of pans. "Taste before you serve," she said. "That's not a suggestion." Elina smiled faintly. Rena's rules had the same rhythm as her own notebook. Short, solid, and true. At 10 o'clock sharp, Miss Harrell called everyone to the dining room. The staff gathered in a loose circle between tables that gleamed like fresh water. Servers, bussers, hosts, and cooks standing shoulder to shoulder. Miss Harrell's calm, steady voice filled the room. She began outlining new rules, simple but precise. She explained that when someone crossed a line about dignity or consent, anyone could say cinnamon 12, and a manager would step in quietly, quickly, without argument. Plain talk would now be a cue to stop jokes that turned people into content. Green umbrella would signal outside support. A friend waiting to walk you home or stand near when things felt off. And lastly, she said they would use the names people chose for themselves. It wasn't politeness, it was respect. The room stayed silent for a moment, the meaning settling like a soft weight. Elina looked around and saw the change on tired faces, subtle relief, quiet gratitude. People who had learned to swallow things now had words to release them. Rick shifted beside her, clearly uneasy but trying. "I understood," he murmured. Chef Rena stepped out from the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Food is food. People are people," she said plainly. "We don't turn either one into props." A quiet ripple of agreement passed through the group. Jess, balancing a vase of flowers, whispered to Elina, "I like these. Easy to remember even when you're half asleep." "That's the point," Elina whispered back. "Words you can reach for." After the meeting, Miss Harrell gave Elina a small nod. Gratitude unspoken but clear. The staff dispersed, their energy lighter than before. The morning air inside the restaurant felt breathable again. Elina lingered near the bar, glancing toward the private room where the previous night's chaos had unfolded. It was spotless now, table linen crisp, candle holders empty. Only the faint scent of vanilla and wine lingered, like memory after forgiveness. She stood quietly for a moment, her thoughts rising. It's strange how a room can forget what happened inside it so fast. But maybe forgetting isn't the point. Maybe rooms, like people, need to heal. They hold sound, smell, small ghosts of what was said. And if you fill them again with care, they learn to breathe differently. I'll help this one breathe. She adjusted the flowers on a nearby table, not because they needed fixing, but because she did. The gesture was her way of resetting the world. From the kitchen came the familiar percussion of knives and laughter. The new day had begun, and somewhere inside it, rules born from a server's quiet defiance were already reshaping the house. By mid-afternoon, the restaurant pulsed with that familiar in-between rhythm, the calm before the dinner rush. The lunch crowd had drifted away, leaving behind the faint perfume of citrus and roasted garlic. The air was quieter now, filled with the whisper of cloth against glass as servers reset tables, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine pulling one last order before cleanup. Elina moved slowly through the room, checking details the way some people check prayers, small, reverent repetitions that made sense of the day. She adjusted the salt shakers so their labels faced forward, wiped a faint ring from the edge of a table, and folded napkins with edges as sharp as new paper. Her mind replayed Miss Harrell's morning meeting, cinnamon 12, plain talk, green umbrella. 3 small phrases that suddenly made the place feel less like survival and more like a community. She wondered how long it would last before someone tested those new boundaries. In her experience, change always attracted a test. The first one came sooner than she expected. The door opened, letting in a gust of late-day wind, and the sound of shoes clicking against tile. Mr. Grant, the regional operations officer, stepped in. He was tall, silver-haired, a smile always half-ready in the corner of his mouth, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. He was known for surprise visits, quality checks, and comments that walked the line between compliment and critique. Rick nearly tripped over himself greeting him. Mr. Grant, didn't know we'd have the pleasure today. Routine audit, Grant said smoothly, scanning the room with quick precision. I like to see how the policies play out when no one's rehearsed. Elina's stomach tightened. She'd seen this type of man in every industry, charm wrapped around control. She slipped back into work rhythm, keeping her expression neutral, steps measured. Grant chose a corner seat and waved a hand. I'll take coffee. Black. Elina nodded, brought it swiftly, and set the cup before him. He didn't say thank you. Instead, he looked her up and down with assessing calm. So, he said lightly, you're the one with the notebook. Excuse me, she asked. Word travels fast, he smiled. The staff says you're writing new rules. Impressive. But we don't run this place on feelings. We run it on consistency. Elina's voice stayed even. Consistency doesn't have to cancel humanity, sir. Rules work best when people believe in them, not when they fear them. We're not changing procedures. We're changing how we speak to each other. Respect makes consistency easier, not harder. Grant's smile tightened. He stirred his coffee, watching the swirl. Well, we'll see how that works once the numbers come in. He turned as Rick approached, clipboard shaking slightly in his hand. Everything all right here? Rick asked. Fine, Grant said. Just measuring the temperature. Rick laughed weakly. We like it warm but not too hot. Grant's gaze flicked back to Elina. Keep that in mind. He stood and began walking the floor, trailing a finger along surfaces, checking details no one else noticed. At first his tone stayed professional, but as he moved toward the younger staff, his words sharpened. Jess, he said, that table's uneven. You planning to serve drinks on a slope? Jess flushed and hurried to fix it. Anthony, he called toward the bar. The bottles aren't aligned. What are you running here, an art project? A few nervous laughs rippled, the kind that asked permission to exist. Then he reached the newest hostess, Layla, barely 20. Her hands trembled slightly as she held menus. Grant leaned closer. You've got a good smile, he said. Use it. Guests don't want blank faces greeting them. Layla stepped back, uncertain. The comment wasn't filthy, but it carried that extra weight, the kind women recognized instantly, the kind that said I can say this because it sounds harmless. Rick hesitated, glancing toward Miss Harrell's office door, then back at Elina. Elina met his eyes, steady, calm, not asking for permission. She took one quiet step forward. "Cinnamon 12, she said. The room froze. The words carried like a bell through still air. Rick straightened, realizing what had just been said. "Mr. Grant," he began carefully, "let's take a moment in the office." "Excuse me." Grant frowned. From behind him, Miss Harrell's voice came even and cool. "You heard her. Cinnamon 12 means we pause and handle this respectfully." "This is about what? A compliment?" Grant asked, caught off guard. "No," Miss Harrell said. "It's about how we maintain safety." The conversation moved into the small office, the door closing softly behind them. The dining room exhaled. Layla stood frozen, her hands still gripping the menus. Elina walked over slowly and rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's all right," she said. "You did nothing wrong." Layla nodded, tears threatening but held back. "Thank you." Elina smiled faintly. "That's what the code is for. You're allowed to call peace before chaos starts." Around them, staff began moving again. Quietly, respectfully, the hum of work returning like the ocean after a wave breaks. The new rules had just been tested, and they had held. 15 minutes later, Miss Harrell emerged. Her expression gave nothing away, but her eyes softened when they met Elina's. She simply said, "Good call." Rick followed, still pale. "Mr. Grant will file his report remotely," he muttered. "He's taking the rest of the week off." Just then Maya arrived at the front door, carrying a brown paper bag and a grin that didn't need explanation. "I brought lunch," she said. "You didn't text a dot, so I figured you either handled it or burned the place down. Judging by everyone still breathing, I'll go with the first. You all right, sister?" Elina laughed quietly, the tension finally cracking. "I've fine. Just doing my job." "Looks like your job got a promotion," Maya teased. "They listening now?" "They are," Elina said. "At least today." They sat together in the small break room, eating from Maya's bag. Rice again, perfectly seasoned, comfort wrapped in foil. Around them, the low hum of the restaurant continued, steadier than before. Elina glanced at the notebook lying beside her tote. Its pages had grown heavy with words, each one a brick in the quiet foundation she was building. Sometimes change sounds dramatic, protests, speeches, noise, she thought. But sometimes it's just a sentence said calmly enough that people have to stop and listen. Cinnamon 12. 2 words. And the world tilts just a little toward fairness. Maybe this is what power looks like when it's finally gentle. Maya smiled at her, half teasing. "You know you just made history in an apron, right?" Elina shrugged, but her eyes shone. "Maybe. But mostly, I just made room for the next girl to breathe easier." They finished lunch in silence, the kind of silence that feels like music. Evening arrived softly, as if the sun itself were too tired for grand exits. Orange light bent through the restaurant's wide front windows, sliding across polished silverware and setting small fires in the glassware. Dinner service would begin soon, but there was a new kind of calm in the air, not the forced quiet of people afraid to speak, but the peace that follows when respect finally takes its rightful seat. Rick walked the floor, straightening chairs that were already perfect. Every few steps he glanced toward Elina, as though her approval now carried weight. Jess polished stemware with the same tune she'd hummed the night before, only lighter. In the kitchen, Chef Rena's voice was firm but unhurried. "Balance your salt. Taste with purpose." Laughter answered her instead of nerves. For the first time in years, Elina felt the building itself breathe differently. It was as if the walls had listened to that morning's meeting and decided to stand a little straighter. Even the sound of footsteps on tile seemed softer, more deliberate. She adjusted her apron and moved toward the front window. Outside, the city had begun its twilight rhythm, street lamps flickering awake, buses sighing steam, the smell of roasted peanuts drifting from a vendor at the corner, her reflection layered over it all. A tall black woman standing still amid motion, calm but alive. The door opened with a small chime. Jonah stepped in. The man from the Harrow Capital dinner, now without a suit or entourage. He wore a plain sweater and carried a small paper bag. Elina blinked, surprised. "Good evening," he said simply. "Welcome back," she replied, her tone polite but warm. He set the bag on the counter. "For the staff. Pastries from next door. They're fresh. Consider it gratitude for the lesson." Elina tilted her head. "You didn't owe us anything." "Maybe not," he said, smiling faintly. "But respect deserves repetition. People notice what's repeated." Before she could answer, Miss Harrell stepped out of the office. She recognized him instantly and nodded. "You're welcome here anytime, Mr. Jonah." He laughed lightly. "Just Jonah today, please." Miss Harrell accepted the bag, thanked him, and disappeared toward the kitchen to share it. Elina watched the brief exchange. It wasn't about food, it was about acknowledgement. Sometimes gratitude arrived disguised as dessert. After Jonah left, a subtle glow seemed to remain, a quiet confirmation that yesterday's courage had rippled farther than anyone expected. Elina leaned against the counter, exhaling. She hadn't planned to lead anything. She had simply refused to shrink. Yet the ripple had become a current. Rick approached, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey, I might have been rough before," he said. "About the name thing. Didn't mean it bad. Just habit, you know?" She met his eyes and nodded once. "Habit can change." He nodded back slower. "Working on it." That was enough. Change didn't need applause. It only needed repetition. Dinner service began. Tonight's crowd was gentler. Families, couples, a few solo diners with laptops. The restaurant's new rhythm held steady. And every time someone used a staff name correctly, every time a guest said thank you, Elina felt tiny threads of repair weaving through the air. Jess passed her near the bar and whispered, "You hear about Layla?" She stayed. Said she feels safe again. "That's good," Elina said. "She's strong." "Yeah," Jess grinned. "Because she's got a map now. You gave it to her." Elina didn't answer, but the truth settled warmly in her chest. Her grandmother once told her, if you light one candle, you don't have to chase darkness. You just stand still and let it see you. Tonight she understood. The evening moved quickly. Orders came and went. Laughter rolled softly. The clink of cutlery rose and fell like a familiar song. When the last guest left, Miss Harrell gathered everyone near the front counter. She spoke with quiet warmth, thanking the team for proving that rules are only as strong as the people who believe in them. What had happened today showed belief in action. That was culture, not policy. She turned to Elina and said her calm yesterday had protected the house and reminded everyone who they were. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then real. Elina felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to attention. She preferred corners where work spoke louder than words. She spotted Maya standing near the door, eyebrows raised, teasing silently. "Take that compliment before it expires." Elina laughed quietly, shaking her head. Later, when the lights dimmed and the doors locked, she and Maya walked home beneath a navy sky that smelled faintly of rain. Their steps matched perfectly, a rhythm built from years of surviving side by side. "You ever notice how peace makes people nervous?" Maya asked. "Like they don't trust quiet?" Elina chuckled. "Maybe because quiet means reflection, and reflection shows truth. Some folks would rather stay noisy." "That's real," Maya said. But tonight felt different. Even the air tasted honest. They stopped at a crosswalk where the streetlight flickered between yellow and green. Elina turned to her friend, the glow catching her face in fragments. "I spent half my life trying to earn space I already owned," she said softly. "All that shrinking just to fit into corners that were never meant for me. But now I know, Peace isn't borrowed, it's built. Every shift, every word, every woman who refuses to disappear. We're building something. I think that's what my mother meant when she said strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands and breathes. They crossed the street, laughter chasing their footsteps. By the time they reached the building, the first drops of rain began to fall. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old paint, familiar and grounding. Nia's voice called from the apartment, bright and clear. "Mama, you're late." Elina smiled as she hung her coat. "Not late, Star. Just living slow." The girl ran into her arms. "Guess what? My teacher read my essay aloud today. She said it made everyone think." Elina held her close. That's how truth works. It makes people stop and look at themselves. They sat together on the couch, rain tapping lightly at the window while they talked about everything and nothing. The notebook lay open on the table, a blank page waiting. Elina picked up her pen, glanced at Nia, and wrote slowly. "Courage repeats itself in the children who watch us breathe through fear." She closed the notebook and placed it beside the bus pass and photo. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. Not warning, just music. Elina leaned back, eyes half closed, the rhythm of the storm syncing with her heartbeat. The city still had its sharp corners, but she knew now she could walk them without bending. Tomorrow would bring more work, more policies to refine, more names to remind. But tonight she rested inside the sound of rain and her daughter's laughter. The day had proven something simple and revolutionary. Quiet can be power when it stands its ground. 3 days later, a pale dawn peeled back the skyline, painting silver light across the restaurant's front windows. The city outside still hummed with the steady rhythm of trucks and early walkers, but upstairs, in the small cedar-scented office above Marrow and Mint, time seemed to slow. The air was warm from the first brew of coffee, and the low murmur of voices carried the weight of something important about to begin. Miss Harrell had asked a handful of her senior team to arrive 2 hours before service. Chairs were arranged in a circle instead of rows. A whiteboard stood at one end of the room, its spotless surface reflecting the small light fixture overhead like a quiet sun. Steam rose from paper cups. Fatigue sat on shoulders accustomed to long shifts. Yet beneath it all ran a pulse of curiosity and respect. Elina walked in steady, humble, her apron folded neatly under one arm. The others looked up. Jess smiled first, that bright, contagious smile that always made the air feel lighter. Rick nodded, awkward but sincere. Chef Rena lifted her chin in greeting, and the two hosts from the front desk shifted aside to make room for her. Miss Harrell stood near the whiteboard, her gray suit sharp against the warm wood paneling. When she spoke, the room quieted at once. She explained that they were there to build the Respect First session. Something short, practical, and repeatable. It needed to be a tool anyone could reach for, even when they were tired or afraid. And then she turned to Elina, asking her to lead them through the core principles, the same ones she had lived on the restaurant floor. There was a pause, not hesitation but reverence. Elina stepped forward, brushed a faint chalk mark from the whiteboard's edge, and uncapped the marker. Her handwriting was careful, not decorative, the kind that favored honesty over style. She wrote 3 simple sentences that had carried her through storms and silence alike. "I will call people by the name they choose. Art asks permission. Consent can't be bought." She set the marker down and turned toward the group, her palms open, voice calm but full of purpose. She told them that when the room gets loud, she wants these words to rise before anger does. They aren't slogans, she said, they're promises, ones kept with hands, tone, and patience. If they practice them in peace, they'll remember them in chaos. She wasn't asking for perfection, only kindness. Her words drifted through the room like incense. Even the refrigerator hum downstairs seemed to quiet. The hosts exchanged glances that said, "We needed to hear that." Jess's eyes shone. Rick sat up straighter, his usual tapping stilled. Chef Rena's jaw tightened, not in defiance but in understanding. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of memory, thought, and recognition. Every person in that circle had been diminished by a careless word or had watched someone else shrink under one. The whiteboard didn't just hold sentences, it held relief. Jess broke the stillness first, her voice uncertain but honest. She asked what to do if she corrected a guest's name, and they laughed it off, as if it were a joke. She didn't want to sound rude, but she also didn't want to pretend it was funny. Elina nodded gently and said that you correct once, with kindness. That's enough. If they test it again, you pass it to management. It isn't your job to convince anyone, only to stay whole. Names are not opinions, they are facts. And facts don't need debate, they need respect. The hosts wrote the line down in their notebooks. Rick looked thoughtful. The air carried rhythm now, like a classroom finding its heartbeat. One of the hosts, a quiet young man named Luis, cleared his throat and asked about pictures. Some guests always wanted selfies with staff after a good night. It felt polite to say yes, but sometimes he didn't want to. Elina met his gaze and said that kindness doesn't require giving away your face. You can smile and say, "We're so glad you had a wonderful time, but we keep our work as work." If they insist, add, "We're not allowed to be in guest photos, but I can get the owner for a quick hello." It keeps boundaries clear and dignity whole. Chef Rena leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, eyes flicking briefly toward Elina's braids. A wordless acknowledgement of battles shared. "Hair," she said. "What's the line when someone wants to touch it or asks about it like it's something they bought a ticket for?" Elina exhaled slowly. Her answer came from lived experience. "The line has to be firm," she said, "because that act is more personal. No touching. Please don't ask to touch my hair. I'm a person, not a sample." She told them to say it clearly without apology, because boundaries spoken calmly are still strong. They practiced the lines together, voices overlapping gently until the phrases became muscle memory. At first, the repetition felt awkward, like a new dance with unfamiliar steps. But soon, the rhythm settled into their tongues like truth. Jess smiled halfway through the exercise. "Feels good to say it out loud," she murmured. Rick nodded. "Feels like armor that breathes." When they paused for refills, Miss Harrell stepped forward again and began adding structure around the poetry Elina had given them. She explained that they'd back those promises with systems. Cinnamon 12 would signal any moment where consent or dignity was being tested. When someone said it, management would arrive immediately. No panic, no spotlight, just presence. And if a guest ignored respect 3 times, the team would close the loop. End the conversation, close the tab, or if needed, close the door. "We protect our people first," she said. Laughter moved gently through the group. Soft, real, the kind that comes when people finally exhale. Someone reached for a stack of thick cards, and soon pens began to move. The air filled with the quiet rhythm of writing and the scent of fresh coffee. They weren't just making notes. They were building reminders, small anchors to keep the heart steady during chaos. One card for names. "My name matters. I'll honor yours too." Another for boundaries. "Work stays work. No photos, no pressure." A third spoke for personal space. "No touching. Kindness doesn't need contact." Another carried truth. "Respect asks permission. Dignity can't be bought." Then came the reset. Plain talk, honesty before noise. And finally, the code that started it all. Cinnamon 12. When they finished, the cards lay in a neat stack at the center of the table, a quiet promise written in ink. When they finished, they stacked the cards neatly in the center of the table. No one made a speech. They didn't have to. The act itself was sacred. By dinner service, every apron held a card. The dining room felt lighter. Laughter without tension, movement without fear. Even the chandeliers seemed to cast a gentler glow. as though the building itself understood the new rules of respect. When Elina passed the mirror near the service station, she saw herself framed in warm amber light. Not smaller, not louder, just whole. Later that night, a delivery arrived. A box sealed in brown paper and marked in tidy handwriting. No longer needed. Inside, wrapped in white tissue, lay the theater mask from the Harrow Capital dinner. The hollow eyes stared upward, harmless now. Elina lifted it carefully like a relic from an old world, and placed it high on the storage shelf. From her apron, she tore a small strip of blue painter's tape, wrote a single word, and pressed it across the front. Retired. She stepped back, letting the faint hum of the refrigerator below ground her in the present. Outside, the night air was cool and honest. Tomorrow would bring more work, more names to remember, more boundaries to teach. But for tonight, this was enough. Morning unfolded slowly, a soft gray dawn that hushed the streets outside. Inside the restaurant, chairs stood stacked like folded wings while sunlight slipped through the blinds in thin golden stripes. On a high shelf, the box labeled retired caught the first light. Beneath it, Elina brewed coffee for the opening crew. The smell of cinnamon and roast rose through the air, a quiet echo of yesterday's meeting. The day respect found its form. Jess arrived first, yawning behind her hand, but smiling when she saw the new pocket cards pinned near the service station. Pocket cards, she whispered, brushing a finger over them. Feels real now. Rick came in next, hair still damp from an early shower. His nod to Elina was easier this time, no stiffness. Morning, he said, and meant it. By 9, the restaurant was alive again. Knives tapped, pans hissed. Chef Rena's steady voice threaded through the noise. Upstairs, Miss Harrell typed quietly, the click of keys replacing her usual instructions. The day carried its rhythm, but beneath it was something new, calm confidence. Every apron held a respect first card. Every server had practiced those lines until they came as naturally as breathing. Before the lunch rush, Elina gathered the front of house team by the bar. She reviewed sections, checked side work, then paused just to look at them, tired, hopeful, growing. There was a new ease in their shoulders that hadn't been there before. She reminded them softly. Yesterday we wrote promises on paper. Today we live them. Don't force the words, just mean them. If something feels wrong, speak up before it hurts. The code exists so no one has to stand alone. Jess nodded. Yes, ma'am. Luis smiled and slipped his card back into his pocket like a charm. Soon the lunch crowd arrived, locals, office workers, 2 women celebrating a birthday. Conversations rose and fell like tides, blending with clinking glasses. Each time a guest used a server's name correctly, it added a tiny note of music to the room. The test came halfway through service. 3 men sat near the window. 2 in suits, 1 dressed casual but loud in posture and tone. He flipped through the menu, then looked up at Jess with a grin too wide. What's your real name? He asked. Jess blinked. Jess. Short for Jessica. Nah, he said, waving her off. Your other name. You people always have one. The table chuckled. The air thinned. Rick froze behind the bar, cloth paused mid-polish. For one long breath, the room's calm faltered. Jess inhaled, steady but shaken, and looked across the room to Elina. Their eyes met. Elina didn't speak, just nodded once, grounded. Jess exhaled and said clearly, plain talk. The laughter stopped. She turned toward management, her tone even. Manager, please. Rick stepped forward, voice firm now. Sir, she gave you her name. That's enough. The man frowned. We're just joking. Rick shook his head. We don't joke with names here. Silence settled over the table. The 2 quieter men looked uneasy. One muttered, he didn't mean anything by it. Elina walked over, slow and calm, her footsteps deliberate. We believe you came to enjoy your meal, she said evenly. Not to test our manners. Names are part of service. They tell us who's speaking and who's listening. If you'd like to stay, we'll serve you with that same respect. If not, we'll close your tab. Either way, everyone keeps their dignity." Her tone carried no anger, only calm authority. The loud man opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Fine," he said. "Just it is." She smiled faintly. "That's right." They ate in quiet after that. When they left, the tip was modest but polite, and the tablecloth stayed spotless. Nothing dramatic had happened, but something important had held firm. Respect first had worked. Later, by the dish station, Jess found Elina drying her hands. "You saw me freeze up?" Elina smiled. "I saw you breathe through it." Jess laughed softly. "Feels strange being brave in the middle of lunch shift." "Bravery doesn't care what time it is," Elina said. That was all they needed to say. Later that day, a delivery driver dropped off a crate of fresh herbs. The label read, "From Harrow Capital Catering Division. Thank you for the lesson." Inside were bundles of mint and rosemary, each tied with a small note. "Respect tastes better." Chef Rena picked one up, shaking her head with a grin. "Guess our recipes are spreading." Rick chuckled. Finally, a policy people actually copy instead of complain about. By evening, service flowed like music. The team moved as one. Every cue anticipated, every silence shared. Guests noticed too. A regular at table 6 told Miss Harrell, "Feels peaceful here lately. Don't know what changed, but it's nice." Miss Harrell smiled. "We changed how we listen." When closing came, the team gathered near the bar. Miss Harrell poured ginger tea into small cups, her new ritual. "To reflection," she said. "We correct, we breathe, we learn." They clinked their cups softly. The sound was light as wind chimes. Elina stayed behind a little longer, wiping down the counter even though it already shone. The quiet felt sacred. The kind born of honesty, not fear. She glanced at the edge of her pocket card peeking from her apron and smiled. Those words weren't just printed now. They lived inside her. Steady, certain, part of her pulse. The story of Elina in Marrow and Mint carries a deeply moving moral lesson about respect, dignity, and the quiet strength of truth. Once a tense workplace, the restaurant transforms into a space of calm and unity because one woman chooses courage over silence. Elina, a hardworking single mother, teaches that true leadership isn't loud. It's steady, compassionate, and rooted in self-respect. By insisting that respect first isn't a rule, it's a mirror. She reminds everyone that integrity is revealed not in public acts but in private choices. Her calm defiance inspires her co-workers to build the house ladder, a small act of solidarity that helps others climb without fear or shame, proving that kindness can be a form of structure, not weakness. Even when confronted with those who once disrespected her, Elina responds with grace, showing that forgiveness can coexist with firmness. Her transformation ripples quietly through the restaurant and beyond, turning policy into humanity and silence into shared understanding. The peace she builds is not borrowed. It's earned brick by brick, person by person, truth by truth. In the story's most tender moment, her phone buzzes. "Got an A on my report. You're my favorite story, Mama." Elina laughs softly, opens her worn notebook, and writes one last line for the night. "My piece has a voice and it sounds like me." The moral lesson is clear. True respect begins where fear ends, and real peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of self-worth. Thank you, beautiful soul, for staying till the end. If this story touched something gentle inside you, don't let it stop here. Like, share, and subscribe to Black Women's Soul. And tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. And tell us, which city or country are you watching from? Your words remind us that this community reaches hearts everywhere. Until next time, remember, every voice matters, every shade shines, and every soul deserves respect.